understood, and thank you for that. Mr. Slipper, I came here, I was a little bit dubious you being a Liberal. I didn't think that you'd be saying too much, but you've said quite a lot that you thought Tibet was independent, and the economic blackmail that China puts over everybody. Have we put too many of our eggs in the one basket on the economic side? And will China suffer like the rest of the world is at the moment? And would that prove like to the rest of the world that we don't have to rely on China all the time for their economic and our progress, and we can be a little bit more independent than just China, China, China all the time? Lots of other questions I'd like to ask, but I'll leave it at that.
When I was in China, in fact, leading a delegation, someone said to me, "What do I think of the Chinese way of socialism?" I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, you earn as much money as you can, as quickly as you can, and you keep as much of it as you can from the government." I thought it sounded a little bit like capitalism. I was also told, when in China, that as long as there's a growth rate of 7%, the Chinese government will be able to keep dissent under control, because essentially they'll buy off people's desire for political freedom with economic prosperity. It is going to be interesting, now that the growth rate has diminished in China, to see whether that's going to place other challenges on the Chinese authorities, and whether people will move to assert the sorts of democratic rights that the rest of us take. The point that you make, I think, is will we be besotted with the need to crawl to China for economic reasons now that they're not performing as well economically as they were? I suspect, sadly, I think government will still say that the Chinese economic growth rate is higher than the rest of the world. Trade with China means jobs in Australia, particularly in the current economic crisis. I once put to Alexander Downer as Foreign Minister, why wouldn't we allow President Chen of Taiwan to overnight in Sydney on his way to countries that recognise Taiwan and the Pacific? And he pointed out to me how many Australian jobs that will cost. I think both governments are equally culpable, and we need to put pressure on both sides of politics to get a more reasonable approach. If you can convince politicians that people genuinely have a concern about the situation in Tibet, and I believe they do, that is more likely to bring about a change in political attitudes.